Just as the vast oceans that surround them, the Hawaiian Islands are engulfed with a long and rich historical culture brimming with lore of supernatural beings and urban legends. There is an intense mixture of real-life tragedies and dark mythological events that call Hawaii their home. Tales of mysterious creatures that watch you in the night, to old goddesses with old grudges, as well as legends of ghosts that are simply part of daily life on the Hawaiian Islands. Everything is considered alive here, including its dark history. Every nook and cranny, every rock and leaf has a role in the Hawaiian lifestyle, and beyond. Some would say that even the banyan trees littering the landscape are believed to contain lost spirits that became tangled in their twisted, otherworldly form. There are an incredible amount of creepy, dark legends the Aloha State has for us to explore, having been passed down from generation to generation, and it's hard to pick the scariest ones. So, here are 8 of the most wicked legends the Hawaiian Islands have to offer. In Hawaii, they call it chicken skin, the prickly, hair-raising sensation that humans experience when they feel creeped out or fearful. And no matter how courageous you might think yourself, you can bet that in the presence of Hawaii's ephemeral night marchers, or the spirit ranks, your own personal chicken skin will undoubtedly be on full display. Long before you see the night watchers, you'll hear them. First comes the ominous, deep thudding of war drums. Then you hear the guttural chanting and spine-tingling blasts from a conch shell. A stench of death might assault your nose. Finally, you might see a succession of torches winding their way toward you in the darkness. They say anyone who hears the sound of said conch shells and chanting rising through the air must hide. If spotted by the ancient warriors, they must play dead or lie flat at the feet of the marchers in respect. Locals warn anyone who comes into contact with the night marchers, or the huaka ipo, to not make eye contact with them. Anyone who dares to meet them in the eye will immediately be slain or forced to walk amongst their ranks for all eternity. In most stories, they're ghostly warriors who stride through jungles and towns alike, adorned in the brilliant costumes of ages past. In their former lives, they protected high-ranking chiefs who were so sacred that no mortal man or woman was allowed to look at them. They can usually be found in areas that were once large battlefields. The Nu'anu Pali on the island of Oahu is a good example. If you understand the lunar cycles and history of the Night Marchers, you might be able to anticipate their arrival in certain areas. They tend to appear mostly during the last 4 Hawaiian moon phases, as the moon wanes to blackness, and they seem to prefer sacred sites and notable culture spots, such as Maukaha Valley Plantation, Kaena Point, and Kalama Valley, amongst others. If you were to encounter them, you're left with few defensive resources other than what was aforementioned. However, the Night Marchers do respect bloodlines. If you're extremely fortunate, one of the long-dead men will be your distant ancestor. They'll shout, "Na'u," which means mine, indicating that one of the warriors has recognized you as a descendant. The procession will then pass you by without causing you any harm. From one manner of brutal death to another, the legend of Ke'aliai Kanaka comes from the late 18th century and tells the story of a man named Kokoa, who went on to become a cannibal chief, plaguing 2 of the Hawaiian Islands, Oahu and Kauai. When he was young, he was known to be a renowned fighter with a brutal appetite for human flesh. It's unknown how he came to obsessively love the taste of human, but he was promptly shunned from his home after it was discovered by his community. He led a small group of followers up into the Waiane Mountains, where they seemingly vanished. Sometime later, Kokoa and his band posed as a group of settlers of unknown origin who landed on Kauai's shores. The king of Kauai at the time met with them and noticed strange differences between them and what he thought Hawaiian people were supposed to be. Notably, their darker than usual skin complexion, odd ways of speaking, and complete lack of a set of uniform laws between them. Most glaring, however, was their starkly contrasting and questionable religious practices. Kokoa, now having renamed himself Ka-Lo, integrated smoothly into the Kauai community, at first. In communal ceremonies, they would feast and play together as neighbors would. In their private and secret ceremonies, however, they would cook and eat stolen victims. This sometimes including children, disguising the meat as simple pork. The higher-ranking members of their group, namely Ka-Lo and his daughter, were festooned with plentiful tattoos and shelled jewelry. The chief himself was covered head to toe in tattoos of the natural world. Eventually, he had his daughter wed a local chief, though this does not end well for either party. His daughter, unknowing of them, breaks a kapu law and is inevitably slain. Enraged by this turn of events, Kalo and his followers revealed their cannibalistic nature in a night of utter devilry. They captured any and all people they could find and held a massive feast. Shortly after this event, they fled back to Oahu, choosing to secret themselves away into the Gulch of Wa'ane on a plateau called Halemanu, or House of the Hand. This isolated location could only be reached on foot by a singular pathway, and it is from this pathway they would hunt anyone who walked along it. This continued for some time, until the brother of a man named Hoahana was kidnapped and dragged into a nearby forest. Hoahana was a large man himself, yet when he saw Kokoa's monstrous disposition, he initially fled the area after challenging the chief. He would spend the next several months honing his body and reflexes with endless training, matching against any and all fighters his word could reach. When the time came for his rematch, he coated himself in oil and approached the pathway, calling out his foe's real name, Ai Kanaka, and then Ka Lo. Kokoa lurked out from his home and boastfully accepted the challenge unarmed. As their match ensued, he found that he could not grasp the younger man's body due to the oil that was smeared on him, nor could he match him blow for blow. Thrown to the ground again and again, he sprung up to flee into his home to fetch a weapon, only to be quickly caught, knocked off balance, and thrown over the edge of his plateau home and into the barbed bramble of the trees below. From cannibals to ghosts, Oahu remains one of the strongest hubs of strange encounters across the Hawaiian Islands. For instance, there is no doubt that the old Pali Road, located in the Nuuanu Valley, appears to be the epicenter for most of Oahu's supernatural occurrences. Well before its construction, this site was where some of the most significant and important battles in Hawaiian history took place. In 1795, in a battle for the unification of the Hawaiian Islands, King Kamehameha I ordered and forced thousands of his opponents to jump to their deaths off the Nuuanu Pali Cliff. Apparently, the entire area around Old Pali Road is completely saturated with the ghosts of its victims. Numerous reports surrounding this area talk of countless ghostly apparitions of wartime, endlessly falling and screaming to their deaths, a phantom body hanging from a tree in Morgan's Corner, and even the night marchers we discussed earlier have been sighted there. One ghost in particular, however, is the most commonly seen. It is that of a young girl missing half of her face. Witnesses claim that she has long black hair and that they've seen her merrily skipping rope as she floats down the road. That alone would be unsettling to see, but one of the original witnesses, and many thereafter, have claimed that the girl's nose, cheeks, and mouth were completely missing. Her only features were a pair of large eyes bulging out of their sockets and rope marks around her neck. The little girl is said to have been the unfortunate victim of rape before the aggressor strangled her with her own jump rope and left her lifeless body in the bushes alongside the road. Her body was significantly decomposed when it was finally discovered. This manner of death may explain why the girl's spirit showcases bulging eyeballs, as well as a disturbing possible explanation for her missing facial features. Wild animals had probably found and eaten parts of her face before any authorities were able to recover her body. Local legend says this is why her features are still missing in the afterlife. Still lingering on the island of Oahu, the story of the Green Lady is that of a woman who would visit the Gulch of Wahiawa and its botanical gardens with her children. During one of their regular visits, one of her children became lost and was never seen or heard from again. The story goes that she died of heartbreak and wanders the gulch looking for her lost child. After this devastating loss, she will gladly take any child that she comes across in the gulch. In Japanese, obake, known as a malevolent shapeshifter, is a term within Japanese folklore that made its way to Hawaii. One of these entries is what the Green Lady is said to have become. Many speculators say that this story was made up to keep children from wandering into the gulch by themselves, but there have been several notable reports of seeing a green woman covered in moss or mold wandering the gulch. She has a hair full of seaweed, jagged, razor-sharp teeth, and fish-like scales. Others say that the green woman closely resembles that of another Japanese mythological creature called the kappa. This creature is said to resemble a turtle-like humanoid that steals children to feast upon. The last known sighting was said to have happened in the mid to late 1980s. In modern times, children and teenagers dare each other to run across the bridge that runs over the Wahiawa Gulch at night. In another crossover to Japanese folklore, Akasha is a demon or cannibalistic entity that feeds on human corpses and is said to bring the bodies of its victims to hell as punishment for committing mortal sin during life. Though these haunting cases don't seem to fit the Hawaiian definition, Akasha is believed to reside in the Kaimuki house located on 8th Avenue and Harding in Honolulu, Hawaii. The history of the house is a gruesome one. The Akasha is believed to have first established its residency after a father murdered his family. The bodies of his wife and son were found buried on the property, but his daughter was nowhere to be found and hasn't been to this day. In the summer of 1942, authorities were called onto the Kaimuki property because a woman claimed that an unseen entity was attacking her children. When police arrived at the home, they were confronted by a hysterical woman screaming that a ghost was trying to kill her children. According to reports, the police watched in horror as the invisible force assaulted and threw the children across the room. At this point, though, the demon was just getting warmed up. 3 women later moved into the Kaimuki home. One night, an invisible force grabbed the arm of one of the women, which frightened the ladies and resulted in a call to the police for assistance. After explaining the incident to the policeman, the woman asked if he could follow them as they drove to one of their mother's houses. Not too long into the drive, the woman pulled into a parking lot. The policeman stopped behind them, got out to investigate, and found the woman wrestling with an unseen force, with one woman seemingly being choked. When the policeman attempted to help the lady, he was forced back and restrained by what he described as a, quote, large, calloused hand. The policeman finally managed to get the lady being choked out of their vehicle and into his patrol car, but neither of the cars would start. When the policeman let the choking victim go back to her vehicle, both cars purred to life as if nothing had happened. Eventually, they drove out of the parking lot, but things only got worse from there. The policeman saw the car door get ripped off of the car and tossed to the road, and moments later, the choking victim was thrown out of the moving car. The other women and the policeman were unable to do anything as what was believed to be the Akasha choked its victim to death. In 1977, a young couple who had just moved onto the Kaimuki property arrived back home from an outing and retired to their room. Around midnight, the woman woke up because the room had just become incredibly cold. The woman looked around to see if any of the windows were open, and saw what appeared to be a large woman with no arms or legs hovering over their bed. Frightened by the incident, the couple consulted with their reverend, who told them to offer food to the spirit because it might just need some help returning to where it belonged. The couple followed the reverend's instructions for a week, and the spirit never returned again. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched its attack on the Oahu Naval Station in Pearl Harbor, Honolulu. This attack killed more than 2,300 Americans. The entire area was left scarred, and for generations, people have not only been haunted by past happenings, but also haunted by the souls who lost their lives that day. The attacks weren't solely aimed at the Pearl Harbor Naval Station, however. The Hickam Air Force Base next to it was targeted as well. Ghostly apparitions, unexplained lights, and eerie noises are said to be common around this historic site. One building at the Hickam Air Force Base still bears the bullet holes inflicted by the 1941 attack. It is said that this is the location where hundreds of soldiers died from their wounds. Visitors and workers alike claim to have seen ghostly soldiers walking around the corridors, hearing their dragging footsteps and painful moans within many of the empty rooms. There is a guard shack in Hickam that is said to be especially haunted. A soldier was said to have been shot dead inside, and late at night, witnesses say they can still see a soldier dressed in a military uniform from the 1940s standing guard in the shack. Other ghosts have been seen at the dock of the USS Arizona, which was at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked. The ship sank and almost all the soldiers aboard perished. More than 900 sailors are forever entombed in that vessel, which is about 37% of the total military personnel and citizens killed in the attack. More than 30 Arizona crew members who survived the bombing have chosen to add their ashes to the underwater tomb as well. Apparitions of soldiers are rumored to patrol that area even during the day. Many visitors reported feeling a great sense of sadness, being frightened for no apparent reason, or extreme pain. The ghost of a soldier who was shot after leaving his post during the attack is said to haunt the deck of the sunken ship during low tide. Eerily, some of the remains of the deceased soldiers are still in that ship to this very day. In 1929, Harold K.L. Castle built his grand mansion on a 20-acre estate at the base of the Pali. 500 feet above sea level, the estate had a steep cliff face jutting up to one side and sweeping views of the windward coast on the other. When it was built, the Pali Highway hadn't yet been built, and a narrow road wound its way through the thick forest of bamboo and banyan trees. That little road crossed over Kahanaiki Stream before opening to a wide courtyard exposing a grand home that seemed to be magically suspended from the slopes of the Pali. The 25-room mansion, its supplementary buildings, garages, kennels, and mountain road were built at a cost of about $300,000 at the time. Known as Paliku, the home entertained such celebrities as Spanish nobility, war heroes, and Hollywood film stars. But after only 17 years, in June of 1946, the Castle family sold the estate to the Roman Catholic Church for only $200,000. The estate then became St. Stephen's Seminary. Part of the building, with its mirrors and Venetian candlesticks, became the seminary's chapel. The private library became the main classroom, and one wing of the top floor was screened in and became the dormitory where the teenage seminaries and their teachers, priests the boys routinely called Father, slept. Each seminarian had a bed, a chair, and on top of the chair, a stainless steel wash bowl about 4 to 5 inches deep. The dorm looked out at the Pali slopes that were barely a stone's throw away. The boys were sleeping in their beds one night in October of 1946. From high up on the hill, a sound could be heard in the distance. One priest described it as a tapping, another more like a clicking, a methodical clicking. It came closer and closer, edging down the mountain like a swollen river. Father Cullinan listened, transfixed, as whatever was causing the tapping came closer and closer, then entered the room. Suddenly, the stainless steel basins came alive. The tapping rattled the bowls up and down the rows of beds, faster and faster. Then the tapping went up to the mountain. He watched as this happened several times that night. The clamor was so loud that it woke the young men from their slumber too, all except one. This one young seminarian slept through the entire racket, but he was not left undisturbed. His neck started to swell up to the size of a grapefruit. Father Cullinan put a crucifix next to the sleeping boy's neck, and the swelling subsided. The presence responsible for the earlier tapping came to a stop at the boy's bed. Father Lynn and Father Cullinan watched in horror as the boy's body was pushed deep into the bed, then brought back up, over and over again. He didn't levitate or actually leave the bed. It was as if he was being pressed deeper down by a strong man, then released. Yet, through all of this, no one and nothing visible was there. Then, whatever it was left the boy alone, but it wasn't gone. Down a spiral staircase from the dormitory was a huge kitchen. Father Cullinan said they soon heard the sounds of pots and pans and dishes being thrown around, a cacophony of sound. When the noise stopped, they went down to investigate. Dishes, pots, and pans were strewn all over. Soon after, then Bishop James Sweeney came out and closed the seminary because of this incident. Sweeney requested the priests not discuss what they witnessed. Only when they were asked years later to describe what really happened, they finally opened up and told the tale. In 1961, retired Bishop of Honolulu, Joseph Ferrario, said he understood a blessing was done, but it probably wasn't an exorcism. The boy, who slept through what has now been termed a, quote, diabolical obsession, has never returned. Seminarians have long talked of attacks by levitating pencils, of doors that would stick on one side but not the other, of pots that rattled without cause. Even lay people who work at the religious institution talk of feeling a presence, hearing a voice, or having something press against them. We hear about diabolical possession all the time. It's in the books and movies, it's everywhere. But diabolical obsession is a different thing. There is no taking over the body and causing harm within the person. According to the Church, diabolical obsession refers to hostile action of the devil, or an evil spirit besetting anyone from without. In this instance, the clattering of the bowls and dishes, the pressing of the boy into the bed. Now, this isn't just a ghost story that has been passed along. Whatever happened at the seminary, according to Ferrario, happened. There's no question about that. He is quoted claiming, quote, it was real. It was told and corroborated by prominent men in the Roman Catholic Church. Eventually, the seminary was closed, and the place became St. Stephen Diocesan Center. It serves as the residence of the Bishop of Honolulu and houses various offices of the diocesan curia. So, what was causing all of this ruckus? Why did the Castle family sell their sprawling estate only 17 years after its creation? And why did they sell it to the church for $100,000 less than what it took to build it? Was the family at Paliku having supernatural experiences before the sale? Being at the foot of the Pali, was the mansion built on the trail of the ghostly night marchers? Perhaps the spirits of those many who lost their lives in falls, crashes, accidents, murder, or suicide happened to culminate in that area. Or did this young seminarian bring something unseen with him to the seminary? Who knows? Despite the cautionary nature of these last few dark, twisted tales, Hawaii remains to be seen as many people's ultimate travel destination, and honestly, for obvious reasons. The Hawaiian Islands are beaming with unmatched beauty around every corner, and a stay there is worth every dime. It's for this reason, though, that many tourists are tempted to take a piece of the islands home with them. For most people, lava rocks are a perfect souvenir, but you should think twice before taking anything from the islands. Legend has it that Pele, the goddess of fire and volcano, enacts a curse on anyone who steals items off the islands. She is believed to be the matriarch of Hawaii and considers the rocks and sand her children. She will do anything to protect them. Therefore, if anyone steals anything from her land, they should expect Pele to exact her vengeance on them. And her anger, like the fury of a woman scorned, isn't child's play. We're not talking about breaking a fingernail or losing your favorite pair of socks. Many people who've reported about this curse tell stories of serious calamities, from pets dying, which is the most common, to losing loved ones and relationships ending. You don't want to be on the receiving end of Pele's curse. The curse is only lifted when you return the stolen items. This explains why numerous tourists write letters to the National Park Service of varying parks there, begging the rangers to return the stolen items on their behalf. Sure, it could be a made-up curse by frustrated locals and rangers angry about people stealing items such as lava rocks, or even tired bus drivers who become exacerbated of cleaning up after tourists who carry goods taken from the islands. And the same could be said for many of these dark stories surrounding the beautiful Hawaiian Islands. However, if you're planning on visiting Hawaii, wouldn't you want to arm yourself with as much information as possible? The last thing you need is to bring a curse on yourself because you decided to carry a rock back home, or be damned for all eternity to follow the sounding drums of the night marchers. Not very good travel stories, are they? But as you can see, there's a lot of information surrounding Pele's curse and the other wicked legends from today's video. If you found any of these entries to be particularly harrowing, consider leaving a comment about what you thought was the most sinister. Thank you so much for listening. A hui hao, and remember, hibernate well, chippies.